In this lesson, we're going to finish up the details on the rear end of our car. All right, so we're really going to finish them up this time. This is just the whole process. Whenever we start getting into details like this, we really need them to match up with the rest of the car. And sometimes it takes a little bit more manual work, pushing and pulling polygons than we originally intend. And so, you get to kind of see the whole raw process of this and kind of my thoughts as we go throughout this process here. So let's start out by creating this crossbar here. This is going to be really easy to do. Let's go ahead and select a box and create a box primitive about the shape of that. And let's give it a little bit of thickness there. I'm going to take that object and I'm going to grab my move tool and let's pull it to the edge right about here. And I'm going to pull it right up to about this point here. It's actually pushed back a little bit, but that looks pretty good. And then we're going to convert this to an editable poly. We're going to go to polygon mode. We're going to delete out these polygons across the inside and the back. And we're going to go to edge mode. I'm going to take this edge right here across the top here. And if you hit F3, you can see which one I'm selecting here, this one right here. And I'm going to push that in. And I'm just going to make sure that it's right on the inside of that piece there. Okay. Then I'm going to take this edge right here across the front. And oops, let's go to edge mode, select that. And pull that forward. So it should get some, kind of this taper here. Now let's go to vertex mode, select these vertices right here on the center. Let's make sure that we have these set to 0 on that. And then let's go to our left view and let's pull those out until they meet right out here on our reference image, just like that. There's going to be a little bit of roundness to this, so we need to add an edge segment right in the center of that. So we'll add that in, and then we're going to pull that out in the Y, just so it gives us a little bit more roundness there. Then we're going to go to Edit, Swift Loop. Let's add a loop right here across the top, and then also right here as well, about the same distance apart. Now the really cool thing about this is whenever we add Turbo Smooth to it, we get this nice crisp edge, but it's not real tight, okay? And then we get this bottom edge that's really nice and curved, okay? It gives us this nice flat edge. And that is recessed a little bit into that. Let's go ahead and change its color to black. And then let's give it a gray material. So that way it looks like everything else. And there we go. So now we have that piece in there. Now here comes the really fun part to this, in my opinion. Let's build the grate. And this is going to be really easy to do. We may have to kind of show you a lighter way of doing it because we're going to be adding all of these little tiny holes. And so I'm going to create a plane, and I'm going to left click and drag this out to about here, okay, just like that. And let's take our width segments down to 1 and our height and length width segments down to 1 by 1. Let's go ahead and convert this to editable poly. And then in our perspective view, let's grab this and let's pull it back until it reaches our car. Now I'm looking at the top edge here, and I want this point right here to not be quite to the very edge back here, but close to it. And then we're going to take this bottom edge and we're going to pull that back. Let's actually pull this up a little bit like that. And let's pull that back until we get to right about here. So, okay. So it should look something like that. Let's take this edge, let's pull it up a little bit so it's cutting through that a little bit. And then what I'm going to do from this point is I'm going to add a segment, and I'm going to add it right about here. And I'm going to take this edge and I'm going to pull that straight back in the Y. So I'm going to pull that back far enough to right about here. Let me actually pull this into the X a little bit. Okay, and it should look something kind of like this. We may actually have to take these points, or actually this entire edge, and pull that back a little bit. It should look like it's cutting through these pieces here, but not completely through it. Okay, so it looks pretty good. It looks like it's flush up against that. If you really need some help with that, you can go to your back view, and this might help as well. If you hit F3, go to vertex mode, take this and pull it right to here, and then to here, and try to get that centered up like that. And then you'll see that we get this shape Okay, but I like doing that. I think that that would be helpful, but I really need that line to be straight up and down. So what I'm doing here is basically cutting it in half. So it's about centered here. Okay, so cutting right through that there. Now, the important thing to remember about this is I need to add some segments in this to make it nice and square. So let's isolate it. So what do I mean by nice and square? What does that mean exactly? Well, I want my polygons to appear to be square. So let's go to Edit Swift Loop. Let's add a segment here so these polygons appear to be square, and let's cut this in half. That's close to being square. Let's add one segment across here, and then here, here, and here. It's close. It's not quite square, but I think that's about as good as we're going to get in this case. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a Turbo Smooth modifier to this. And Turbo Smooth, what it's going to do is it's just basically going to split this up into more squares. Let's go ahead and take our iterations up to 3 on this, and then right-click, convert it to Editable Poly. Now at this point, you could select all of the polygons on this piece here. And this is going to be a little tricky, okay? The reason it's going to be so tricky is because we need to inset it, and then we need to extrude it. And there are so many polygons on this that it could freeze 3ds Max. So you may want to go ahead and save it, so that way you can get back to this point very quickly. I'm going to go ahead and try it, and if it doesn't work out all that well, we'll go ahead and we'll just kind of show you on a few polygons. So right now it's trying to extrude it by the group itself, but I don't want that. I want to inset by the polygon itself. Go ahead and select this value and type in 0 and hit enter. It may take just a moment to update that because there are so many polygons. And then once that's finished, take that number again, and let's go ahead and type in something like 0.1 or 0.01. Notice how that comes in. Let's do 0.02. And let's do 0.05. I think that's going to be best. So let's hit OK on that. It's going to finalize that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up my extrude before I do all of these. Okay. So let's wait for that to finish up there. There we go, finally. Let's activate our extrude and just left click and drag that. See if we can get that to go back in. I think that's going to be best. So let's hit Control Z one time. Let's left click and drag on one of these points, and you'll want to pull down in the mouse. And I just want a little bit, and then let's drag it one more time. Left click and drag again. So something like that. And then I'm going to go to edge mode, double click on this edge right here, and it'll select that loop. And then let's go to modify selection and similar. Notice that it selects all of these similar edges like that, but it doesn't get all of them. So you'll want to hold down Control, select another set of loops like that, and then do modify selection similar. Go until you get all of them. Let's go ahead and edit and do similar again. And it gets really close. And we're getting really close here. What I really need to do is I need to get all of these edges in here, and I need to chamfer that because I really want it to harden up those inside edges. Let's go ahead and take a look around here, make sure we've got everything at least close. I'm going to select one edge from each one of those rows that it missed. And then modify selection similar. I really wish it would have grabbed all of them. But you see a new tool here, and you can see how it can be used in some cons to that as well. Doesn't always work, unfortunately. And I like to keep my tolerance really low. Oh man, now it's not going to work. Okay, so let's try this instead. Let's go to edge mode on this, and let's just go ahead and delete these out. Okay, with those deleted, let me see if I can do, well, let's just go ahead and delete those out. Let's go ahead and apply a turbo smooth to this, and you'll see how this rounds out. You can bump up your iterations to that, show isoline display, and you see that you can get something that looks kind of like a grate here. So if we turn off that isolation, you can see that that creates this nice, neat little pattern here. And so now we have this all set. Now, the issue that we're going to have here, if we go to our back view, is we have this exhaust that's going to be in here. And we need this to be cut out. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch my selection to this ellipse selection or circular selection region. And I'm going to left click and drag from about the center of that exhaust. And I'm going to try to select all those polygons in that area. Okay, so let's try something a little bit closer to the center here. And with all of those selected, that should get us fairly close to what we need. Let me go ahead and switch back to my box selection. And let's come through here. And let's deselect that and that. And what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to get a good selection of all these that looks more cylindrical than anything. Okay, so that looks good. I'm going to get rid of this. Okay, so you can see that this looks pretty good for the most part. Okay, really nothing that stands out to me that I can't work with. Let me add that back. Maybe that one too. And maybe these. Yeah, there we go. So you can kind of see how that looks there. Go ahead and delete that out. So now we're just left with these polygons. If you have any stray polygons in there, go ahead and get rid of those. But this should be good. Now, that's going to look really ugly whenever we turbo smooth that. What we're going to do is we're going to hide that. So to hide it, let's simply bring in a cylinder. And I'm going to left click and drag out a cylinder. And it's going to cover up the edges of that. Let's try that one more time. Left click and drag. Make sure you left click your height. And let's grab our move tool and simply move that over the top of that grate. Okay, or that wire mesh, whatever you want to call it. And let's rotate it into position till it matches the surface of our grid there. So it looks pretty even right there. Let's grab our local direction whenever we move this and pull it straight down. And it's going to cover that up. Let's go ahead and take our height segments down to 1. And you can leave your segments to 18 if you like. I'm going to go ahead and bring it down to 8. Because with something like this, I like to keep it kind of low. And then we're going to convert it to editable poly. Let's take this polygon right here and let's inset this. And let's go to our front view, or excuse me, our back view. Hit V and K. Let's take that amount down. Let's give it a nice little edge. Let's do 0.5 and hit OK. And I'm going to delete that. I'm also going to delete that back polygon. And then, let's see, let's take this border right here. I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to move that back. Let's make sure that that's in the local direction. Hold Shift, move that back, and it's going to create this little edge here. You'll notice that we have some polygons that are kind of showing up a little bit. Let's hit V and K. Kind of take a look at how that is sitting, that entire object. How that's sitting in there. We may have to center it up a little bit more. Okay. All right. Now let's take this back set of edges, double click on that, grab your scale tool and scale that in all three directions outward. And so it's going to create kind of this flare. I'm going to grab my move tool and pull that forward into the Z. And I want that to just kind of rest over the top of that. Then let's take these polygons on the inside, hold shift, select all of those. Grab your scale tool and scale that in all three directions until it covers up all of those points on that grid. Okay, that grate there. Let's take this edge here that we had selected around the edge, hold shift and pull that back so that way we get this little rim on that. And then let's go in and add a turbo smooth modifier. Let's give it, let's say 3 or 4 iterations, and then we're going to come in under edge mode and we're going to add in swift loop. Let's turn on show end result. And I'm going to add a loop right in here, okay, to flatten that out. And then it can stay nice and round up to this point here. I want it to kind of flatten out toward that edge. Let's go ahead and add a loop right there just to kind of flatten that off there too. Okay, so we should have something that looks like this. Select both of those and change their color to black and apply that gray material so that matches everything else. And take a look at it, see what you got there. All right, so let's go to our back view. See, that gives us plenty of room for our exhaust to fit into. And so we've finished up that bit of details along the back side there. Now what we want to do is we want to move on to the next portion of this where we're going to actually take the panels and give them all thickness and really start to lay in those seams, making them all look correct. And then we'll move on to our final details where we'll really start to get intricate with creating things like the belly pan, all of the plenum, or plenum, I can't remember exactly how it's pronounced, but that's kind of like the rubber edges around your windows and around the windshield and things like that. We'll start getting into the door handles and door locks and mirrors and all of that. So let's go ahead and get started in our next lesson with that.